And we're here with TSPN, and this is Richard Forster with your supervisor's report from June 8th, 2015. And first up on the agenda, long agenda, we had discussion on the petition certification for a petition that was gathered and sent to the Board of Supervisors by the group opposing the Newman Mine project. That's critical in this discussion, the Newman Mine project, and that'll come up in a minute, but they had to gather about 1,285 signatures. They gathered 2,303 signatures. The clerk recorder of our county and registrar of voters, Kim Grady, managed this through her department. They only counted 1,610 of these ballots and looked at the signatures. The number of valid signatures was about 1,287. Number of invalid was about 315. So clearly it was valid at that point, so there was no need to spend resources to count anymore. So that is the reason that took place. But regarding the petition itself, the language on the petition states very clearly what the petition is for: referendum against a resolution, ordinance, and reclamation plan passed by the Board of Supervisors. Herein lies the problem. The resolution and ordinance that were passed regarding the Edwin North Center project are subject to referendum because they are legislative acts. The action for the reclamation plan is a ministerial act that does not require a vote. It requires a vote of the Board of Supervisors, but it is reviewed by SMARA if there's an appeal, the state mining agency. So the reclamation plan is not subject to referendum. The attorney for the opponents groups knew this because he talked to our county council before this language was constructed, and he knew this before it was circulated to the public. What it does is it throws a bad situation on the petition, because now you have language that people supposedly read when they signed this, but you have language that confuses the voters. They're thinking that the Newman Ridge project and the Edwin Center North can both be overturned by referendum. That is not the case. So you have a situation where the voters were misled. But when they signed this petition, as most people know, most of the petition gatherers were $2 a person signature gatherers and didn't really care what they were gathering signatures for. So long story short, you have a situation where the Board of Supervisors is left with a quandary as to what to do. Do we want to promote misleading the voters? Do we want to try and correct the situation? It is obvious we have to place this on the ballot, but the time is not of the essence because it doesn't have to go on until 88 days before the election. The next election is June of 2016. So the board chose the option of filing for declaratory relief, which this was done with the Superior Court on Tuesday of this week, which means it'll go to court. The judge will decide if the language is satisfactory. If that is the case, it will go before the voters. And that'll probably come back to the board to set the election. But we deferred our judgment in this case until we get a ruling from the Superior Court. So I don't want to spend any more time on that. Next up, grand jury asked for an additional $6,000 to conclude their investigations, reports this year. We don't want to spend any more money than we have to. Grand jury said that the previous grand jury ran a deficit and they're just recovering some of that. So we don't have a lot of choice in this either. If the Superior Court judge rules that it is a valid expenditure, then we have to approve it, which we did. We had the Amador Economic Development Partnership, represented by the Amador Business Council, asking for $30,000 for the second part of a study, so phase 2 of their economic study of Amador County. Talked about macro, micro perspectives on the economy, identifying businesses that are key in the county that you can grow, data collection, analysis, and then going on to application of that You know, the board has concerns here. $30,000 is a lot of money, of taxpayer money. We want to make sure it's spent correctly. So the position of the board was we're going to have a further discussion on this, a workshop to allow the public to participate and look at the data that's being presented. We don't want just data out there. Economic data is great, but we want to see results at the end, and everyone does. So that's the direction we're heading on that item. Amador County Arts Council, the board approved a resolution certifying that the Amador Arts was the body that's recognized in our county as the sole arts council for purposes of receiving funding from the California Arts Council. And their budget, as Tara Forget, their executive director, said their normal budget runs about $90,000 a year. Last year they had a $45,000 grant from the California Arts Council on the McCalmy River reflections issue that came up. You have a PACE issue, property assessed clean energy. This was a long discussion, but as it turns out, we need more information on this issue. This was Golden State Finance Authority, which comes out of RCRC, or the Rural County Representatives of California. It is an issue that will finance renewable energy generation, energy efficiency, water conservation, electric vehicle recharging, infrastructure improvements. The issue here is that this is a loan that covers the cost of that. That loan, though, becomes first up as far as the debtors. So it's in first position. Some agencies like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the federal housing agencies, don't like that. They like to be in first position, even though these loans are usually not significant in value. They can be anywhere from $2,500, so the normal homeowner, all the way up to commercial, where you can get into 15% of the property value. So if you have $1 million building, you have a $150,000 loan out there in first position. That probably wouldn't apply for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. But anyway, our Treasurer Tax Collector Mike Ryan was in to talk about this, and Tacio Neto-Ruin, our auditor. They indicated there wouldn't be a tremendous amount of cost to the county. Some of the unknowns we have is what happens if there's defaults here. Primarily, it should not affect the county, except for as any of the defaults affected the county in the last go-round. We also had questions on, is this an item that can be assessed? The indication we had from Steve from our local solar company is that solar improvements cannot be assessed per state law, cannot increase your assessment on your property. We need that question answered. So as Mike Ryan said, you have this is an isolated program where the county collects the fees for outside companies. In this case, Y Green is the sole person that is implementing this program. The first position requirement, it's not a monthly payment, it's a semi-annual payment unless your taxes are collected monthly. It adds significantly to the property tax bill, which if you're on a bi-monthly collection, there could be problems there. So anyway, we're going to have people come in and give us a more thorough presentation on PACE. I know we got a lot of information on Tuesday, but I think we need a lot more before we agree to sign on to that program. Could it be good for consumers? Yes. Could it be bad for consumers? Yes. So we want to answer those questions. Next up, we had our General Services Director, John Hopkins, in to talk about all of our facilities in the county, the operations and maintenance, replacement funds, deferred maintenance. A lot of issues there. What it comes down to is, since I've been on the board for 15 years, this is an issue that has risen its head almost every year of putting dollars away. The last 7 years have not been easy years in the county to balance the budgets, so not a lot of money is getting put aside. You're kind of chasing your tail, sometimes trying to put out fires when there are issues with buildings. The board was, I think, in agreement that we need to at least highlight those top 5 items, try and prioritize them, and find some money to go after making the corrections or doing the maintenance needed before you have an emergency situation. So that'll be on our radar screen in the coming year. We had a report from Aaron Bruce Torrey, our Community Development Director, on the Regional Traffic Mitigation Fee Program, and the overall impetus here is the county has put in a significant amount of money, $3.76 million over the last about 13 years into the Regional Traffic Mitigation Fee Program. $6.9 million was collected with the county along with the 5 cities, so 54% of that is county. Problem is the county hasn't been getting a lot of projects out of this. The good thing about it is there have been a lot of good projects that have been constructed that are benefit to the county because we're intertied so closely with the city on a lot of our connectivity. So anyway, with that, Supervisor Plaz has made a suggestion that the county retain those dollars and that the county go ahead and listen to ACTC if they have improvements and the city wants some of that funding. They have to come to the county, or ACTC along with the cities come to the county, make a presentation. That will require a modification of the MOU. Our direction from the board was to take this back to ACTC, make sure there's full transparency to the cities, because this is going to be something that might alarm them because it could affect some of the programming that's in the network for roadways. So that's what's going on there. Jim McCargue was in with our solid waste management department. We talked about our Buena Vista landfill pledge of revenue agreement. Because of time, I'm not going to go into depth, just to make it clear that this is a pledge from the county that if something happens with the landfill over the next 30 years of the closure, that we're going to come up with an additional $2.2 million for catastrophic failures. So that takes us from, we thought we were paying it down to $5 million because of the years that have lapsed, but now we're right back up to so over $7 million that the county would be obligated for in that event. Also, Jim McCargue talked about a consideration of a stormwater ordinance, thoroughly vetted out by our Public Works Department. They had a $100,000 construction cost there. So with that, if you want any more information, 223-6470 about any of this information, or come by the office and talk to us. And this is Supervisor Richard Forster. We are going over to a break.